Hello and welcome to the Inquisitorial Archive. My name is Kevin O'Rourke and today I'm going to be talking about the second session I ran with Only War. My players are the 13th Kinog Grenadiers. It's a regiment I made up for the game specifically, a highborn regiment. I have a previous video about the first session. This session went pretty well again, once more finding a lot of stuff indeed myself and the players are quite liking about Only War. And not too much longer before I'll actually do a review, probably in the coming days more than likely. Just want to have a little bit more of a look at the some of the other rules we haven't quite touched on yet, particularly in my game. But oh, spoiler alert for those who haven't seen the first video, I am using a modified version of the adventure at the back of the book. There are some few things different, but last episode's, the first session effectively, was a bit more divergent. This session not quite as much of a divergent. The group's commissar Barca Hannibal, or Hannibal Barca, I'm not sure which, wasn't able to make this week, or he won't be able to make next week, so he's not taking part in this adventure. He's on a safe pass course, learning how to shoot people in the head with your bolt gun effectively. That's the joke was going around with the players. They don't know why in character necessarily, why he's gone off. It's like some kind of safety course. Could actually be in fact how to shoot people in the head in the most effective manner possible, because you're going to do it. It's a bow shell, it's a soldier. You need the right bang for the buck. However, they were met with Engineer Kasugi, which is one of the other players who won't be able to make it regularly, but was able to make it this weekend, and hopefully be able to make it next weekend. Last session they were charged with a mission to go forward and investigate the why they've lost contact with a Prometheum refinery on the same island as them. And so the PCs were able to, they did very well in their logistics roles to get the gear they require, as well as some gear they didn't require, but was nevertheless quite useful. But we started the session with the PCs still back at base. They got up to one or two minor things, just checking up their things. They were very thorough in making sure all of their gear was in operating order. I'm delighted to see that one of the heavy bolters they had been given, they were only supposed to be getting one, but they got two. One of them had a stick around still from the factory. This one had never been used in the field yet, so they're quite happy about this. Like, yeah, okay, we've got something good here. So, under the command of Sergeant Brander, they began to move out. Unfortunately, they can't use the roads to get through this particular section of the island, because many of them have fallen trees on them, or fallen to disrepair, or there are ambushes waiting. It's too much of a threat, and in fact too difficult to do, to be constantly moving trees, sweeping for mines, defending yourself against orcs. It's actually easier, unfortunately, to go through the forest. So the PCs were happy to do so. Unfortunately, only one of the PCs could drive, and he's one of the two PCs with navigation surface. So it resulted in one PC by himself trying to do navigation surface, which at rank 1, which this mission is supposed to be for, they're finding it exceptionally difficult to actually get on the right path. So they were wandering off course for several hours. This journey in theory could take as little as 12 hours. However, I'll give you the total later, and you'll see how far off course they went at several points. They saw a village of some of the locals. However, when they contacted command and asked them out, this was a village that had been basically of tree houses done up in the trees, and it was very obvious to them that you wouldn't be able to see these and by a kind of aerial pass. They were designed such a way, but from the ground floor they weren't terribly difficult to notice. PCs contacted commander like, hey, what's the situation with these? They're explained that because this particular continent, I'm thinking some destroyers of Australia for this place, was set up as sort of game reserve by a rogue trader in centuries past, that there were various settlements around the world. Unfortunately, those that weren't occupied by the Imperial Guard because of a lack of strategic value or positioning, that the locals were coming under attack both from the wildlife and the orcs. So they've maneuvered into the jungle. What they don't say to the PCs is that these guys are actually a lot better at surviving in the jungle than the Imperial Guard is, because they're the locals. They're used to the exact flora and fauna here. It's like, okay, the PCs decided we're going to avoid these guys because command has told us that a couple of times they've tried to use these guys as scouts, but a lot of time it's just the squad doesn't come back, but one of these guys does come back. So they're not overly well trusted. So the PCs decide to avoid him. It's like, okay, no problem. However, we get to the end of our first day, and I turn to the troop and I say, okay, it's getting towards night time. You can't drive through the night. Only one of you can drive, so you're gonna have to hunker down somewhere. So the PCs decide, it's like, okay, we'll go outside, and we're doing no campfire, because that's what the Imperial Guardsman uplifting primer says. You know, we shouldn't be doing it out of a position here. It's like, okay, grant. And they sit out, and they've got the ramp of the Chimera open at the back, and they're looking out, and it's like, so they're sitting there, they're opening up their meals. They're lamenting they've only got their dried quail and pheasant to eat, and they've got little sachets of this powder which they pour into a cup of water, and they can make their applesauce, which is like, there's tough elements to being in the Imperial Guard, even for a highborn unit. You just have to do it, but it's an honour served for the God Emperor. Meanwhile, probably within a couple of kilometres, there's a small squad of Brontian long knives sitting there with their nutrient paste, wishing it had a flavour other than just horrible. But as the PCs begin to deploy out and start eating their meal, unfortunately, they have attracted the attention of some of the local wildlife. Well, not originally local, but these ones certainly have made their home here. Only two of the PCs, Engineer Kasugi and Trooper Jorgensen, in fact, actually managed to spot these creatures before they attack. A surprise round is initiated. A group of PCs is attacked by 4 terror cats. Terror cats are large creatures, hulking size, in fact, about the size of a cow or bull. Quite large, quite deadly creatures, and they have 8 limbs. These things are terrifying. When they actually start hurting the PCs, got into a bit of trouble. One attacked Trooper Jorgensen, one attacked Sergeant Brander, and one attacked Engineer Kasugi. Now, Trooper Love was sitting on top of the Chimera at the time, trying to keep an eye out. Failed to see them, but he was trying to keep an eye out and figure out where the hell they were going next to the map, because they were quite off course. They had spent a whole day trying to get to this location, and he wasn't exactly sure they were on the right course at the moment. So the last terror cat, we started referring to as Thundercats during the game, decided it smelt some of the rations inside in the Chimera, so it ran into the back and started eating some of these rations. The player characters started to fend them off. They took out the sergeant took out his chainsword and started slashing at these strange beasts. And although what a moment of interesting note was, I described it, these, they saw feline eyes in the tree line, something large. And being one of the only two who passed, Engineer Kasugi went off and decided to raise the alarm. However, he said that there were orcs in the trees, clearly confused, and the players did pretty well trying to fend them off. However, Engineer Kasugi was knocked down into onto the critical tables, was able to survive, suffering blood loss, almost dying, but the players managed to fend these beasts off. They did not account for any of them, and lost 9 days worth of their quail and pheasant and other sorts of meat rations, as one of the beasts ran away with a load in his mouth after eating them, after eating several more before that quite quickly. With I think highlights for me being, I think the highlight of that one for me was when Trooper Lowe opened up the hatch at the top of the Chimera and started shooting in his las pistol to try and scare off the terror cat. The PCs had no casualties, however they killed no terror cats in turn, but they moved back into the Chimera and decided not to go outside the Chimera unless absolutely necessary in future. And they stepped there for the night. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly ideal conditions, but they continued on, and the next day they continued moving around. They're having a bit of trouble, and they heard the sound of weapons fire, and eventually noticed that there was a plume of smoke coming from a not too great distance off. The PCs tried to hail any local Imperial forces on the Vox frequency, However, they decided, it's like, okay, we'll go and investigate. We haven't got a response. We'll go and investigate. As they drew closer, they found a wing of a Valkyrie. In fact, the Valkyrie that had shuttled them and the rest of their platoon down onto the planet. They were recognised from serial number, etc. So they were concerned. However, as they drew closer, they did say, "Hey, you know, what if this is a group of stormtroopers, and their mission's higher priority to us? What if they commandeer our Chimera office?" And suddenly the players became quite worried because they had fought the Terror Cats and barely survived. They didn't want to have to fight anymore. Understandable. However, the Sergeant Brander said, "Okay, well, you know what? We'll keep going ahead. These are obviously Imperials." And they come across the remains of a Stormtrooper squad. They guessed correctly in some respects. However, the Stormtrooper squad was quite badly injured. There was only 4 of them left alive. And they managed to negotiate with Sergeant Brander to be allowed to come on. Although he was wary that at any moment they were going to requisition their Chimera. But these guys are in no condition to continue on their mission. And as the sergeant of the Stormtroopers said, after inquiring as to what mission the PCs were involved with, he said, like, well, obviously, if you're that close to that place, then we're way off course. You know, we got shot down way off course. You know, we're just going to have to Vox into command and scrub the mission, or have them send somebody else. So reluctantly, the PCs let them near the Vox. They were like, they're going to speak to command through the Vox. They're going to commandeer our Chimera. However, they didn't. Which the PCs were quite thankful for, but they were really worried the second they saw it was in fact Stormtroopers. They're just going to take it. They're just going to take it, and there's not much we can do. However, these Stormtroopers are not able to, they're not physically fit enough to engage in combat. However, the sergeant was well enough to be able to assist in those navigation and surface checks, and the PCs drew closer to their target. After 46 hours, the PCs came within sight of the Promethean refinery. Of a 12-hour journey. Now, there was times when they were sleeping during this, but the PCs were quite annoyed with this, but unfortunately that's the way the rules went. Then they sent forward Trooper Jorgensen, who started to scout out the refinery. He identified that there were several orcs. I won't break down exactly how much are there, but there were 9 guard towers, all being manned by an orc. Well, some of them were just kind of sitting there looking out really bored. Other ones had big cigars, whatever. And some of them were, you know, kicking Gretchen off the side, that kind of type thing. But each of these guard towers had an autocannon on it. The PC spent some time discussing how they should try and attack this position. They noticed the main door was quite badly damaged. The main entranceway had suffered some form of damage that they believed they could pile through with the Chimera. So the PCs, after discussing various plans of having people sneak forward and set explosive on the different guard towers to cause a distraction, realised they didn't have somebody who was both good at stealth and good at demolitions, and describing someone over a microbead how to set up a explosive isn't something that most people are quite keen on when they're the ones that actually have to set up the explosive. So the player characters came up with the plan of Trooper Jorgensen would once more continue driving them, and they would just plough straight towards the entrance, as they had Trooper Love firing the multi-laser and Engineer Kasugi firing the heavy bolter on the Chimera. This worked out pretty well. They didn't actually manage to hit that many people with these weapons. However, Trooper Jorgensen got a very good start in this and managed to get multiple degrees in the the flat out maneuver, where you just piled straight ahead. You're going to go, if you go flat out, you go double the vehicle speed. So instead of the tactical speed is 15, it goes 30. But then you get to make a operation check. So operate ground vehicle or whatever it is. And he rolls, if he gets for every degree of success he gets like a plus 5 meters onto it. So he managed to go 50 meters instead of just a 30. So he ploughed through most of the killing field in front. The orcs began to raise the alarm. They had to fight about a dozen orc slugger boys who were running towards them, and there was a run turret with a few Gretchen as well as the orc knob. One of the first casualties I believe the PCs managed to commit was there was an orc I described who was on lookout near the main gate. They had taken a porta potty and cut the top half off, and he was sitting there with a newspaper and was surprised for the first little while the PC started to fire at him. Which unfortunately they didn't manage to throw the frag grenade and actually hit, which I think would have been hilarious, landing the port body, especially after the orc just sunk down beneath his paper and the thing to get his gun and pull up his breeches. But our PCs managed to, through combining fire, managed to rack up a not inconsiderable tally of kills. The Trooper Jorgensen finally got to get out of the driver's seat once the vehicle was parked and take out his long lass. Start laying down some fire himself, hoping to add to his kill count, which he's quite preoccupied at the moment with. Well, not overly so, but he wants to make a name for himself. That's one thing Trooper Jorgensen wants to do. He's the unit's sniper and marksman. So the PCs are managing to whittle down some of the orcs as they're drawing in closer. Some of them coming out of the side streets are drawing in closer, and then the leader of the orcs arrives, an orc knob, who takes out his gun, which, as I described it, started shooting green electricity at them. Trooper Jorgensen asks his Sergeant Brander, "What do you want me to fire at?" And he says, "Shoot the big one!" Because he was terrified of this weapon, which he'd never seen an orc fire before. So he's like, "I'm taking that down." Which they started to lay the fire in and do some damage, including the Trooper Jorgensen getting a crit and injuring the orc by giving him a half action to perform next turn. He continued sending down their withering hail of fire. We ended up in an odd situation because eventually the orc knob went down. He'd taken a lot of fatigue. He'd been killed, in fact, and it was being set on fire. I described him as him just going, no, and he just starts rolling on the ground, slowly, quickly burning to death. One of the other orcs runs forward with a bucket, but one of the PCs point out, didn't you describe the river here as like taking off some of the overflow from the Breton refinery, so wouldn't that be quite fun? I was like, yes it is. So the orc throws it on and causes a small explosion which finishes off the orc knob and takes the orc with the bucket out, in fact, as well. So that worked out pretty well. The PCs managed to whittle down the orcs with some daring combat, particularly from Sergeant Brander, which is quite nice to see the fact when he was getting in so close that he'd been very concerned to start the game that his stats weren't good enough, that he just wasn't going to forward. However, he's got a nice chainsword, which works out well on the damage front for close combat, and his ability to boost everyone's damage is quite nice too. If in one of his orders, he's able to give everyone who's a proper comrade, and by proper comrade I don't mean like the servitor that the agency has, but he's able to give everyone a bonus of +4 times damage they do as long as their comrade performs specific orders. It's like, okay, you're saying on the field fire. Once more, Trooper Jorgensen had to fight in close combat with the player and saying, like, I'm making a sniper, but my guy's he's getting really lucky. He's doing really well in close combat with his monosword. The entire unit's equipped with monoswords. And he somehow is managing to quite well against York, at least injuring him. I think Sergeant Brander came over to help finish off his guy in close combat. This is not the first time he's done quite well in close combat, despite the fact he's geared entirely towards ranged. The PCs eventually managed to rout the orcs. You know, some of the orcs have run away, but they managed to rout quite a few. And that's when they start exploring this place, where they see the orcs have been modifying some of the machinery. The engines here being utterly horrified, and that's what he's going to be doing next week if the player isn't there. He'll be fixing up all of the, or trying to fix up some of the equipment. However, when they examined the gate, they realised, like, well, what does this look like? The engineer was like, well, what does it look like? Took this down. Does it look like it was explosives, or some kind of tank round, or what? And he said, well, give me a roll. I was like, okay, we've got good techies. Didn't make a particularly hard roll. I was like, okay, you've got good techies. You don't think this was done by an explosive. You think this was done either by a battering ram, or you think potentially it might have been done by a vehicle. You're like, something physically forced its way through here, possibly through repeated blows and hits. The group contacted command and gave really this information. Command unfortunately isn't able to, they're not able to get any Imperial Navy assets, get a Valkyrie out there. They can't spare any Chimeras, they can't get troops out there. So they have a standing order for the moment to hold this position. against all enemy forces. And that's pretty much where we started leaving the game. The PCs now kind of going, those probably weren't all of the orcs. We have to hold this position against them. Oh, Trooper Jorgensen, when he went up into one of the watchtowers to have a look around and see what was in the surrounding area, managed to see the roll and noticed and identified that the autocannons, the reason the orcs weren't firing the autocannons at them and immediately started trying to climb down, he didn't believe the orcs hadn't loaded the magazines properly. They hadn't figured out how to use an autocannon. The PCs have at least seen somebody loading an autocannon, so they've, it'll probably take them like far more rounds than it should, but they should probably be able to load this in. And imagine it's not going to be something you're going to want to do in battlefield conditions, but imagine them trying to employ those in the defence. Now, you may have noticed I'm not speaking, when I was talking about the fight with the orcs. Unfortunately, Trooper Love and Engineer Kasugi did poorly in the fear checks, and unfortunately their contributions, due to not being able to act for a couple of turns, when they eventually passed their tests or were able to get up after so many rounds, they had penalties. So they weren't able to lay down the fantastic level of fire they would have liked to do. However, I believe Engineer Kasugi's abilities, bringing in a lot of tech use there that they wouldn't have otherwise had this session, was definitely quite helpful. And Trooper Love has, he injured quite a lot of orcs in the first session. Plus, regardless of whether he did it quite well or not, he actually did manage to navigate the group there, which only himself and Trooper Jorgensen would have been able to do. And Trooper Jorgensen was driving, so if it was just him by himself, it would have taken a very long time to actually get there. So that is that's how the end of this session, and about the dawning on the players that they're going to have to hold this place for potentially weeks, potentially even months, or they could just die sooner. That'll work out pretty well. But I'm looking forward to running next session. Still getting good impressions with Only War. I think I got a quote I quite liked, and I had to write it down in the middle of the session that one of the players did. It was Engineer Kasugi, his player, said it, and I quote, in the middle of the fights against it, I believe it was against the Terror Cats. Get every bonus, drag them out of his heart. They're referring to me. They wanted every single bonus they could potentially try and get. I don't know why there's a smear there, I suddenly noticed. I hope it's not there when I play this back. But I think the group worked out quite well. And I'm quite optimistic about how things are gonna shape up and how the PCs are going to do. So I look forward to seeing you again. Goodbye.